What's going on, guys? I'm Tim Kelly. This is Phillies Stoplight. Thank you for tuning in. The Phillies take 2 out of 3 in their most recent series against the San Diego Padres, a doubleheader yesterday, so kind of nice to have an off day today. They will get back at it tomorrow on 4th of July against the Cincinnati Reds, and I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want to discuss who on this team will end up being all-stars. All-star starters were announced yesterday. The Phillies do not have any position player starters. We'll see pitching-wise whether they end up having the starter for the National League. But Sunday, the full rosters will be announced, and it's expected that multiple Phillies will indeed be all-stars. There's really 5 candidates that I'm looking at on this team. The first would be Trey Turner. He leads the NL in hits. He's 4th in WAR among position players. Francisco Lindor is going to start at shortstop, and the irony is that last year, Trey Turner started at shortstop for the National League team, and Francisco Lindor really ended up having the much better season. And even by the All-Star break, it was pretty clear, it was kind of egregious that he wasn't an All-Star. I do think Trey Turner will probably be an All-Star, but Elly De La Cruz on the Reds, who again, get to in a minute, he's going to have a case himself. So I don't think it's a slam dunk Trey Turner is going to be an All-Star, but he should, in my opinion, be an All-Star based off of what he's done offensively and some of the improvements he's made defensively. Kyle Schwarber is another interesting one. In theory, he should be a slam dunk. He's having the best year of his career, 26 home runs, 912 OPS. Those should be numbers that get you in as a DH in the National League. The problem is Shohei Ohtani is permanently going to be the starting DH for the National League. And then Rafael Devers, because he was traded to the NL, now has become a candidate for the NL DH spot. So it comes down to how many guys are you going to take that are just DHs, and Kyle Schwarber's numbers to me clearly are deserving of being an all-star, but I do wonder if he's one of those guys that ends up highlighting some of the lists of huge omissions, because these numbers, to have a 912 OPS, he's played every game this season, to not have that guy in the all-star game would feel egregious, but there's so many DHs in the National League that are successful that it may end up just being a numbers game with him. We'll have to see. Zach Wheeler, to me, is the biggest lock on the team. He's tied for 2nd in WAR among pitchers in the NL with Logan Webb. Paul Skeens is ahead of him. It'll be interesting if he ends up getting tapped as a starter. He certainly has a case. I think Paul Skeens is probably the favorite, and you would be naive to think that baseball doesn't want to put Paul Skeens on as many national stages and have Livy Dunn shown in the first inning, all that. It would be cool for Zach Wheeler, though, because he's from outside the Georgia or outside the Atlanta area where the All-Star game is this year, and it just kind of would be a recognition of the guy that's been the best pitcher in baseball probably over the last 5 or 6 seasons. So he could be the starter. If not, I would anticipate he's going to be in there 2nd or 3rd inning for the National League. So Zach Wheeler, to me, of these 5 is the safest. Christopher Sanchez just had a tremendous month. Zach Wheeler was a pitcher of the month, but Christopher Sanchez had a really good month. He's basically top 10 in all NL categories. He was an all-star a year ago. I asked him post-game yesterday, and he said, I dream of being an all-star every year. So certainly it's something he's hoping for. And then Ranger Suarez is in a weird spot because he's got 10 straight quality starts. He's 7-2 with a 2.00 ERA, but he missed all of April, and he's on a team that is going to have a bunch of other all-stars. So the question is whether he gets in. I think Wheeler, for sure, of these 3 starting pitchers gets in. I think Jesus Luzardo will probably end up on the outside looking in because of those 2 really bad starts he had, even though in many categories he's still among the league leaders in the NL. Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez are interesting, though. You've already seen 2 guys on the Braves that probably would have been in, Chris Sale and Spencer Schwellenbach. They're hurt. They will not be in the game. So it comes down to who ends up replacing them, and do other guys drop out. Last year, for example, Zach Wheeler got selected, but he pitched on the Sunday before the All-Star game, so he wasn't able to pitch in the All-Star game, and somebody else went in for him. Ranger Suarez last year got selected, but then was hurt, and ultimately, I believe it was Max Fried that replaced him. Christopher Sanchez ended up being a replacement. So just because maybe the Phillies have 2 or 3 All-Stars on Sunday does not mean that they won't end up with 3, 4, or 5 by the time the game actually takes place. But that's kind of where I'm at on these. If you made me guess, I think Zach Wheeler is in, I think Trey Turner's in, and I think one of the 2 starting pitchers is in. And course, the TV just shut off behind me. I thought I had this great setup with on Pattison in the background, and here we are. It went to the screensaver. Whatever. I think one of these other starting pitchers, at least one of the other two, is going to get in. It's just a matter of whether they get in Sunday or they have to wait. And Kyle Schwarber, kind of the same thing. So that's where I'm at on the All-Star game. The second thing I want to get to in today's episode is a potential Nick Castellanos trade. Jim Bowden of The Athletic wrote this yesterday. He said, the Castellanos rumors just never go away, and for that reason alone, multiple GMs think there's a chance he could get moved if Philadelphia can find a better right field option. Now, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but Jim Bowden is not exactly batting 1,000 on rumors and reports in his career, but he is the former general manager of both the Reds and the Nationals. He has different executives come on his MLB Network radio show all the time. Dave Dombrowski's gone on there a few times. So when he mentions Castellanos in an article about players that executives think could get moved, I do think it's worth discussing. Even though I don't consider him to be an insider, I think he has enough credible connections with general managers and executives around the league to be able to put together a piece like this that's accurate. And again, this is not a report saying that multiple teams are interested in Nick Castellanos. It's a report saying that GMs around the league are kind of wondering if this could be a possibility. The problem for me is a few things. First of all, for as much as the Phillies would probably like to offload the remaining money to Nick Castellanos, he's due another $20 million next year. Right now, they have issues in the outfield. Max Kepler in left field would probably be the biggest one, but center field, you still have questions with Marsh and Rojas. For as much as Nick Castellanos, he has a 776 OPS, or had that entering last night, that's maybe underwhelming compared to the production that you thought you were going to get signing someone to a $100 million contract. He's still your best offensive player in the outfield, and I don't know how you move on from him during the season and don't get worse. Because I look around the outfield market, I think the Phillies are going to struggle to get one outfield upgrade, let alone what would you do? Trade Castellanos, find another right fielder, and then just keep Kepler in left field? I don't see how that upgrades your team. And certainly I don't think there's going to be the pieces to potentially upgrade in both right and left, or center and right, or whatever the case is. I think if you make an upgrade in the outfield, it's going to be a one spot, and then you're going to have to go with what you have at the other spots. And Castellanos, to me, is probably just going to be in right field for the remainder of the season. Now, what happens beyond this season, I don't know. The Phillies could pay down some of the $20 million, maybe pay down half of that next year and trade him and go in a different direction in the outfield. Entirely possible that takes place. I wouldn't expect like a huge return for that, though. And I just think right now, at this juncture during a season where you're trying to win a World Series, unless there's evidence that Nick Castellanos and Rob Thompson and whoever, like that Castellanos' relationship with the organization has really deteriorated, which despite that benching in Miami earlier this month, I don't think is the case. I don't think it's a pressing enough thing that you would make this trade during the season. To me, this is something that happens more in the off season, and during the season you're looking to build around what you have. And this is just, it's not a team that can afford to give away right-handed hitters that could potentially make an impact. And Castellanos is streaky, maybe hasn't delivered to the same level that he did in Cincinnati when he played well enough to earn this contract, but he's still one of your best right-handed options, and I don't see how you move on from him during the season. Finally, the Reds, Castellanos' former team, they're going to come in tomorrow. It's an afternoon game on a Friday, which is extremely rare anywhere but Chicago. But for 4th of July, afternoon game. And I love, like a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to work on 4th of July. I love being there on like Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, whatever. There's just a different energy at the park because so many people are watching these games, whether it's intently or passively, but at picnics and barbecues. So it feels like a bigger game because, at home you have a bigger audience. And game one is going to be a hell of a pitching matchup. Andrew Abbott, who will be an NL All-Star, he's going to go against Jesus Luzardo in game one. Luzardo Again, I think he's going to end up on the outside looking in on the All-Star game because of those 2 awful starts. But outside of that, he's probably been one of the 5 best pitchers in the NL. So, and Abbott has been one of the 5 best pitchers in the NL. So you put Abbott against Luzardo, that's a really good matchup. Game 1. Game 2, Nick Lodolo, who has a 3.52 ERA and is a lefty that's pitched the Phillies really hard in the past. He's going to go against Ranger Suarez, who... I mean, what more can be said about what Ranger Suarez has done? I think there can be some concern. You can still have concerns about potentially signing him long-term, given some dips in velocity and the back injury history. That's fair, but it's impossible to deny what Ranger Suarez is doing right now. So that'll be another great matchup. And then Game 3 is also a great matchup. Zach Wheeler, that speaks for itself, goes for the Phillies. Chase Burns is one of the top prospects in baseball. He had a great first start, and then I think he didn't make it out of the first or second inning in his second start. So, but he's someone with tremendous stuff. And to go against Zach Wheeler, who was once that high 90s guy that came up with the Mets and was a really highly touted prospect, that's a great pitching matchup. So 3 great matchups. The Reds are an interesting team because we didn't even mention Hunter Green. Like, this is a team, if they got into the playoffs, could have a scary starting rotation. They have Ellie De La Cruz, who's having a good year. Former Philly Austin Hayes is having a rebound year this year. Terry Francona's in his first year as a manager there after taking a season off. Like, there's some pieces that would make you think the Reds are a great team or could be a great team. And they're 45-42, so they're not out of things. But lineup-wise, they haven't gotten enough consistent production to kind of be off the seesaw right now in terms of whether they're going to be buyers, sellers, and to what degree. So this is a big series for both the Phillies and the Reds. Can determine playoff positioning, and certainly it could determine whether the Reds are a team that in a few weeks is buying or selling, and whether they're competing against the Phillies to get guys, or whether there's someone the Phillies are calling to potentially get bullpen or lineup reinforcements. So should be a fun series this weekend. I hope everybody has a great holiday. We will not be taking days off on Pattison. We will have a ton of great content, Phillies and otherwise, as we always do. So hopefully you check that out, and I will talk to you guys next time.